Oh, hi. Welcome to the Clever Magic community. I am the random dude, Josh. And for those of you who have never played Commander, sometimes there are just those games where salt is the way to go. I mean, yeah. And thankfully, Kaldheim, the newest and coolest set ever, has probably one of the saltiest cards ever to come forth for the format. Now, you're probably sitting here wondering, I wonder what card he's talking about. Well, how about we just get right into it because, yeah, why not? So, we are talking about Turgid, God of Fright. This is one of the new modal double face cards from Kaldheim. So for 3 black, she is a 4/5 legendary creature, a god with menace, with the ability whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Let me read that again. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So, break it down. You play any sort of discard spell, any sort of ability to make your opponents sacrifice permanents, or say they sacrifice an evolving wilds. If Turgid is on the battlefield, guess who's getting those cards? You are. So let's go over the deck here, just so you can kind of see what's going on. Now with Turgid, because she is one of the modal double face cards, on the backside is Turgid's Lantern, where you can tap the Lantern. Target player loses 3 life, and then you can pay 3 and a black to untap the Lantern. Not something you're really going to be using for this deck. I mean, you can, but for this deck and for the approach, we want to be utilizing and abusing that ability. So I'm just going to run through the creatures here really quick. So start off with Blood Artist. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain a life. Going to be getting a lot of life gain off of this, especially as you're making opponents sacrifice creatures or you're having to sacrifice. That's just going to be how it is. Burglar Rat, when he ETBs, each opponent discards a card. Demon's Disciple. When Demon's Disciple enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. This is going to be really helpful specifically with Turgid, because if they sacrifice a planeswalker, guess who gets it? You do. Ear-splitting Rats, again, very similar to Burglar Rat. When it comes into play, each player discards a card from his or her hand. Discard a card from your hand and regenerate Ear-splitting Rats. Now, I've got this on Tapped Out, and it says that it's not EDH legal yet. That's because the set just hasn't officially been released. But the next card, Eradicator Valkyrie, this is one of the new creatures from Kaldheim, flying, lifelink, hexproof from Planeswalkers, which, given the current status of Magic, this is a fantastic card to have. But what I like is the boast ability. So when you attack with Eradicator Valkyrie, you pay 1 and a black, you sacrifice a creature, each opponent then has to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. With Turgid on the battlefield, her ability triggers, you get all of those creatures under your control, thus triggering any ETB effects, whatever the case may be. Ghoulcaller Gisa, another fantastic creature, being able to sacrifice and create some tokens, so more blockers for you. This is also really helpful if you sacrifice an opponent's bigger creature, we'll take Blightsteel Colossus. That's going to be a big one. This is a great way to get a whole bunch of blockers out for super cheap. Hypnotic Spectre, 2/2 flyer. Whenever it deals damage to an opponent, that opponent discards a card at random. You're going to see throughout this deck tech the overall feel of, we are either discarding or making opponent sacrifice. You're going to be using their stuff. They're not going to use their stuff. You're using it. Liliana Spectre, when ETBs, each opponent discards a card. Opposition Agent. This one, you always have to, if you're going to have a deck that is salty, this is the way to go. You control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. While an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast. Pathrazer of Ulamog. This is a big addition to the deck. 9/9 Eldrazi. But the kicker is it has Annihilator 3. So whenever you attack, the defending player on the attack trigger must then sacrifice 3 permanents. Those hit the graveyard, triggers, you get those, and then obviously Pathrazer of Ulamog cannot be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. So that's going to do some heavy hitting. Plague Crafter, when he ETBs, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. Ragman, this one's fun. Pay 3, so black. Tap, target opponent reveals his or her hand and discards a creature card at random from it. Play this ability only during your turn. So again, not only do you have the ability to see what's in their hand, but then they have to discard and a Turgid's out. Cool. Sangromancer, whenever a creature an opponent control dies, you gain 3 life. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may gain 3 life. So very much kind of playing off of what Blood Artist does. Tiny Bones, Trinket Thief. I was very excited to finally be able to use this in a deck. So at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent discarded a card this turn, you draw a card and lose a life. So because of the life loss that you're getting from Tiny Bones, that's why I had to put in Blood Artist and Sangromancer to counteract that loss. And then pay 4 black. Each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life. So if you can get them to all discard their hands, boom, you're going to be doing damage. Ulamog's Crusher, very much like Pathrazer of Ulamog, we're utilizing the Annihilator trigger. Vampire Nighthawk, Flying Death Touch, Lifelink. This is just a nice blocker to have and to be able to start swinging early. Whispering Spectre. So this one, just a 1/1 flyer with Infect, because of course I have to put my flavor on it, and that is Infect. And I'm okay with it. I know other people don't like it, but hey ho. Whenever Whispering Spectre deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. If you do, that player discards a card for each poison counter he or she has. So it not only works with Turgid, but then adds my little flavor to it. And then finally, wrapping up the creatures, Woebringer Demon. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. If they can't, you then sacrifice Woebringer Demon. I'm going to jump down to my maybe board real quick. Just a couple other creatures that I'm looking at potentially putting in. So we've got Dream Devourer, another new card from Kaldheim. Each non-land card in your hand without Foretell now has Foretell. So this is a new mechanic from Kaldheim. Its Foretell cost is its mana cost reduced by 2. So, excuse me. So we'll take We'll take opposition agent. If you have Dream Devourer on the battlefield, you foretell opposition agent. That means opposition agent only costs 1 to cast as its foretell cost. So definitely something I may consider throwing in. Elvish Doomslayer, when it dies, each opponent discards a card. Phyrexian Obliterator, whenever a source deals damage to a Phyrexian Obliterator, that controller sacrifices that many permanents. Gimme, gimme, gimme. And then Sheoldred, Whispering Wind, has Swamp Walk. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. So again, we're really utilizing Turgid's ability here. Quickly go over the artifacts. Arcane Encyclopedia, you got to get that card draw. Bolas' Citadel allows you to look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play the top card of your library. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to its converted mana cost rather than paying. So it allows you to be able to cheat stuff out. And that, again, another reason why I added so much life gain to the deck. Charcoal Diamond for more mana. Commander Sphere. Everflowing Chalice. Again, this is one of those ones, if you get it, you want to wait till about turn 4, turn 5. Actually, I would wait till about turn 6. Just because you're going to want to do the multi-kicker at least 3 times to really get the value out of Everflowing Chalice. Elixir of Immortality is going to be very helpful. Pay 2, tap, you gain 5 life. You shuffle Elixir of Immortality in your graveyard into your library. So it allows you to have that recursion, because as you're making the table discard their hand, you're not getting those permanents back or those non-permanents. So this allows you to be able to really get more value out of your deck. Felwar Stone, again, another mana rock. Lightning Greaves, quick creature has haste and shroud. You want to get this on Turgid, more for the shroud. Mind Stone, again, just more mana. You can sacrifice it to draw a card. Mox Opal, again, this is a much needed mana rock, especially once you have more artifacts. And you'll see later on that I've got a way to get a lot of artifacts. Smokestack. This is a nasty card, but an effective one for this deck. So during your upkeep, you will put a soot counter on Smokestack. During each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a permanent for each soot counter on Smokestack. So you get Turgid out. Make sure Smokestack is out. You're going to pass the turn. And once those soot counters start going, you're going to not only have protection from Smokestack yourself, but it's going to wreck the table. Now, remember, permanence also includes lands. So once your opponents start sacrificing everything else, only thing they have left is lands. So it has the potential to cause people to concede, but that's okay. Of course, we have to have Soul Ring. Thought Vessel, no maximum hand size. That's going to be very helpful. Thrawn Dynamo, again, another mana. The reason why I'm putting so many mana rocks in this is to make up for the commander tax that you're going to have to pay, because of the fact that people are not going to want to let Turgid live. So just be prepared for that. Whisper Silk Cloak, equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. Again, another nice ability, nice artifact to be able to put onto Turgid to protect her. All right, I'll save the lands for last. All right, Bereavement. Whenever a green creature is put into a graveyard from play, its controller discards a card from his or her hand. I put this in, one, because I actually have the card, but two, in my play group, I play against a lot of people who play green. And so this was my way to kind of counteract what they do. A black market, whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on black market. Then at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add 1 swamp or 1 black for each charge counter on black market. As you're making creatures die, whether it's by sacrificing or removal or combat, you're going to be able to get a lot of value off of black market. Bottomless Pit, another nasty card very similar to Smokestack, only this is an enchantment. So during each player's upkeep, that player discards a card at random. Court of Ambition, so one of the enchantments from Commander Legends. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard a card. If you're the monarch, instead, each opponent loses 6 life unless they discard 2 cards. So you're either going to be doing a bunch of damage or you're going to be getting a lot of their stuff. Desolation. At the end of each turn, each player who tapped a land for mana during that turn sacrifices a land. With Turgid out, you're going to get the land. If a plains is sacrificed this way, Desolation deals 2 damage to that plains controller. It's mean. This whole deck is mean, let's be honest. But it's so much fun. Dictate of Erebos, another fantastic enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So this provides extra protection for you when you have to sacrifice your stuff, forcing the table to then sacrifice more. Lethal Vapors, whenever a creature comes into play, destroy it. And then to pay 0, I know he's even getting salty. Pay 0, destroy Lethal Vapors. You may skip your next turn. Any player may play this ability. So really makes people question what they want to do. Liliana's Caress, whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. Nettlevine Blight. I love this enchantment aura. So you play this for 6. You enchant an opponent's land. During that person's end step, so at the end step, they have to sacrifice the permanent that the creature or land that Nettlevine Blight is attached to. And then they attach that enchantment onto another creature or land they control. With Turgid out, that means whatever that permanent is, whether it's a creature or land that they had to sacrifice because of this, you will then get. Oppression, whenever a player plays a spell, they discard a card. Ouch. Phyrexian Reclamation, pay 1 and a black, pay 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. This allows you to be able to have that grave recursion. And then finally, Revel in Riches. This is one of the other win conditions within the deck. The main win condition is obviously, I'm just going to take all your stuff until you concede. But Revel in Riches, whenever a creature an opponent control dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token. With tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Now, here's the kicker. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. I know. It's just mean, isn't it? It's just a salty deck. Yep. He agrees. So if you can pull this off, especially if you've got a table full of creatures and you make them sacrifice everything, or they'll die, chances are you're going to be winning next turn. So moving over to sorceries, Awaken the Erstwhile. Each player discards all the cards in their hand and creates that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. Again, because of Turgid, you want to get as many permanents as you can. Curse of the Cabal. This has suspend 2. Target player sacrifices half the permanents he or she controls rounded down. Now, if you play it at the suspend cost, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, if Curse of Cabal is suspended, that player may sacrifice a permanent. If he or she does, put 2 time counters on Curse of the Cabal. All right, Dark Deal. Each player discards all the cards in his or her hand, then draws that many cards -1. And if they're permanents in their hand, triggers, you get it. If you have Liliana's Caress, they're going to be taking quite the hit. Dead of Winter. The reason I put this in here, so all non-snow creatures get -X until end of turn, where X is the number of snow permanents you control. If you notice in the land, and I'll go over the land here in a moment, but I'm going to be running 15 snow-covered swamps. So that means all non-snow creatures get -15 till end of turn. That is a board wipe. Oh, yeah. Death Cloud. Each player loses X life, discards X cards, sacrifices X creatures, then sacrifices X lands. This is another win condition. This is a game winner, especially if you're able to tap all of your mana. You've got black market out and you're just generating an obscene amount of mana. This will win the game. Despise. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a creature or planeswalker card from it. That player discards that card. With Turgid out, boom, it is now yours. So it really lets you to pick and choose. Duress. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose non-creature, non-land card from it. That player discards that card. I want your Soul Ring. Cool. I want your Sword of Feast and Famine. Cool. Hymn to Torok. I was so excited to put this in. Target player discards 2 cards at random. Just let him discard. That's all I want. Mind Warp. Look at target player's hand and choose X cards from it. That player discards those. So you can really kind of decide how you want to do that. Necrotic Hex. Each player sacrifices 6 creatures. You create 6 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So again, you're going to be getting a lot of creatures and a lot of permanents from this deck because of Turgid. Palaka Predation. The target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a card from it with converted mana cost 3 or greater. That player discards that card. Obviously, you want to aim for the permanents, but if they happen to have a board wipe or whatnot, make them discard it. And then, of course, on the backside, you've got the swamp as a backup. Pox. This is an old yet mean card. So each player loses 1/3 of his or her life, then chooses and discards 1/3 of their hand, and then sacrifices 1/3 of their creatures, and then sacrifices 1/3 of their lands, rounded up. I told you it was mean. Sadistic Sacrament, another potential game winner, especially if you're down to, say, 1v1. So for 3 black, search target player's library for up to 3 cards and exile them, and then that player shuffles their library. Now, if you pay it for the kicker cost, so you're going to be paying 10 total. If Sadistic Sacrament was kicked, instead search that player's library for up to 15 cards, and then exile them, and then that player shuffles. So you can actually go through their entire library, take out all their win conditions, at which point, if they don't concede, I'd be impressed. Smallpox, very similar to Pox. Each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, then sacrifices a land. Finally, Stupor. Target opponent discards a card at random, then discards a card. So they're going to be discarding 2. Going over the instance, you got Dark Ritual. just for some quick mana ramp. Geth's Verdict. Target player sacrifices a creature and loses a life. Liliana's Triumph. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana Planeswalker, each opponent also discards a card. Treacherous Urge. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You may put a creature card from it into play under your control. That creature has haste. Sacrifice it at the end of turn. And then finally, Vona's Hunger. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you have the city's Blessing, instead, each opponent sacrifices half the creatures he or she controls rounded up. It's a mean deck. But actually, it's a lot of fun. It is so much fun, just in the playtesting I've had. Finally, just kind of wrapping up the Liliana Dreadhorde for the first Planeswalker. Whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. This allows you to create more zombie creature tokens, where you can make each player sacrifice a creature, or if you can get the ultimate, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifice the rest. Ouch. And then Liliana, Waker of the Dead. Each player discards a card. Each opponent who can't loses a life. Really, the biggest thing with Liliana is at the beginning of combat, you can put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So even if creatures die due to, say, you're sacrificing their stuff or whatever the case may be, this allows you to be able to get that. And then obviously going through the land, Ancient Tomb, Arcane Lighthouse, good way to take out your opponent's Hexproof and Shroud. Bojuka Bog is helpful, especially if someone is playing a lot of graveyard recursion. Use this one very carefully because we're obviously pulling from graveyards. Buried Ruin allows you to also sacrifice and return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Cabal Stronghold, pay 3 tap, add a black for each basic swamp you control, which would be 15. Command Beacon allows you to pull Tergrid from the command zone into your hand. This is going to be very helpful late game, especially if the commander tax is high. Crystal Vein just allows you to add, again, more mana. Darksteel Citadels, Indestructible, Evolving Wilds, just to get that basic land out. Gaia Reach Sanatorium. Each player draws a card, then discards a card. I mean, that ability right there is going to do wonders, especially with Tergrid. Path of Ancestry. This is nice because it allows you to really be able to scry as you're casting creatures. Strip Mine, definitely a fantastic utility land. Temple of the False God, same thing. This is definitely not one to play in the first 5 turns. You definitely need to be playing it, later in the game. Terramorphic Expanse, Thespian Stage. This one is very helpful, especially if your opponents have other utility lands that are helpful for you. Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Each land is a swamp in addition to its other land types. That just means all those colorless lands that you're playing. Take, for example, Temple of the False Gods. That means you're then going to generate 2 black mana instead of colorless. And then Witch's Cottage allows you to be able to pull a creature card from your library and put it on top of, or pull it from the graveyard and put it on top of the library. So all in all, like I said, this is a very, very fun deck if you're playing it. May not be if you're on the receiving end. And then in the maybe board, I do have Words of Waste Next time you draw a card, each opponent discards a card from it from his or her hand. So you can really be nasty with this. So that's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck tech. If you did, let me know in the comments what you think. Is this a deck that you're excited to play? Or are you cringing a little bit, thinking, oh my gosh, Josh is the most horrible human being on the planet for even coming up with this? I won't be upset. In fact, I'll take that as a compliment if that's the case, because I mean, there's a reason why I named this the God of Salt, because that's just how this deck will go. So I hope you guys enjoyed the deck tech. Again, make sure to leave a comment, like the video, share it if you want. And then, of course, we are working towards, obviously, we want to get to 800 subscribers. So make sure to share this with your friends as well. Make sure to pay it forward, smile, and of course, as always, we'll catch you on the next one.